project like that, you're totally open to whatever ideas you think you may adapt. I went down to the Archaeological Museum 5 days a week for 3 months, studying statues. What is traditional poses? Whether they were cemeteries, whether they were celebrations, it made no difference. I used those as a basis for what my choruses in the Bacchae or in the Electra or in Trojan Women, what my choruses did, what the choreography was. And it worked. When the chorus finished with their poetry and struck these poses, here I had on the stage 15 women who looked like they were statues. Also, in the Electra, we had on stage a 15-foot statue of Apollo, because he is throughout that whole script. Apollo is what gives guidance to Orestes to take back his kingdom. Right now, his Agamemnon's ex-wife, Clytemnestra, is the queen, and her lover is the king consort. And Orestes was spirited away as a young man, and now, 15 years later, he's coming back to claim his thing. And he's going to do it the only way that they can, in those days, shedding blood. So he winds up determining the fate of his mother, Clytemnestra, her lover, Aegisthus, and it gives vent to Electra, who is the only one who has been carrying this pain as her father was killed by her mother. Yeah. So, to get back to my inspiration for the chorus and how they moved and their poses at the end, etc., when I worked with a composer and we took apart these chorus verses and created movement that illustrated what they were experiencing. And they are also, the best thing to say it is that they are the practical people on stage. They love Electra. They come and see Electra every day and give succor to her. But at the same time, they have to be careful because they're just townspeople, and Clytemnestra might bring down her wrath on them. So they're talking and enthusing and making Electra, giving her support, but at the same time they have to be careful that they're not dragged into this awful situation with the present king and queen.
Now, here's a question. We're talking about Sophocles' play, Electra.
Right.
When you were using your awareness of Greek statuary, when you were working with the composer, when you were putting together the orchestration of and choreography of the chorus, were you finding support for all of that in the play itself? Did you find in Sophocles' poetry the rhythms, the expression that you were putting into the movements of the chorus?
Well, I'll give you the short answer. It is all wrapped up in the words, and that depends on who is translating. Premier importance is finding the right translation. I read many different translations of Electra by Sophocles, not Electra by Euripides, but Sophocles. And I discarded them until I hit one by a very famous translator in England. His name is H.D.F. Kitto. And it embodied all of the wonderful poetry that Sophocles gives him, but it was active. And because of my background in Greek history, I realized that if I take the English words of Kitto and jack it up, because when the Greeks speak, they speak more energetically, more demonstrably, and more beautifully. They have a wonderful language. That if I did that with the English language, it would govern the rhythms, which meters I would decide on using, and how this would impact the audience. Let me give you an example. The very beginning of the play, 3 men come out onto the stage and it's dawn. And one is an old guy who's been the guardian of a young man, Orestes. And he sets the scene. This is Mycena, where your father set sail for the Battle of Troy. That's Argos over there, big city. You are here for a purpose, and that is to take back your kingdom, which has been stolen from you. You are here. And Orestes answers in this manner: my friend, my loyal servant, everything you say or do proclaims your true devotion. Just as a horse, if he is thoroughbred, will keep his mettle even in old age, will never flinch, but in the face of danger prick up his ears, so you are ever first to proffer help and to encourage me. When the language is at that pace, with that basis, and you know what's coming, it gives it a kind of energy, it gives it a kind of beauty, and it gives you a kind of action within the dialogue. And if the translator is sensitive to these things and winds up using active verbs or descriptions, then the audience takes this in, and it's second nature to say, wow, I'm hooked, I want to hear more. And they go on and on. What I did is the way the Greeks give you directions to the American Express. I mean, they talk fast, they have energy, they have incredible power. So when you get a chorus of 14 and they start singing the words, the poetry, the meter, then you've got the foundation for an exciting evenings of theater, you know.
When you designed your choral performances, were the chorus performers dancing, or were they standing still, or was there kind of a movement, but it wasn't precisely a dance type movement?
Exactly. It was a movement, sometimes to go from point A to point B, but always within the mood of that particular scene or that particular moment. So their contribution was visual, audio, and at the same time it had historic roots back to the statues, you know. I'll give you an example again. The chorus talks about the killing of Agamemnon, how Clytemnestra drew him a bath, lured him into the bath, then took an axe and killed him. Well, Kitto uses these words to describe that scene for the chorus. And at the time, my chorus, they were in 2 semi-choruses of 7 each, and they go from the stairs of the palace down into the center of the orchestra, and they wind up on one knee with the hands reaching the wound that Agamemnon experienced. Things like that motivated me, you know, and I found that it moved an audience. It made it different, it made it clear, it made it horrible, and that's what I think Sophocles wanted. I mean, these are my eyes and my interpretation, but it's been proven to me because I sit out in audiences for 11 different productions of Greek tragedies, and I watch people, and they are reacting. They are with it. These methods work. sometimes Rondiris was just the foundation. I went off on my own creativity.
But you, as you say, they worked. You had remarkable success in Bangor and other theaters producing these works.
Yes, yes, they did. Because people don't know what to do with these Greek scripts when they get them, you know. Some people make it into some kind of a little dance like this. Other people make it down on their knees, and that's it. But I felt always that if I took away the potential power of the choruses, I'd be eliminating what is one of the beauties of the script. You know, when they first invented Greek tragedy, it was all singing and all movement. Then they started having contests and giving prizes, and the movement got more expansive, you know. And they had choreographers. It's a nice Greek word, by the way. They had choreographers. So all of these things have developed over the year because some guy, a director, said, let's try this. I think that's a good idea. You know what? It doesn't work. Cut it. Oh, this does work. Let's try to work it in. And you see, there is a famous scene that Sophocles has when Orestes has sneaked in and is standing there with his friend with an urn with his ashes in it. And Electra begs for the urn so she can lament over her brother, and she takes it into her, etc. And it's at that moment that Orestes realizes that this is his sister. He didn't know that. She doesn't know who he is. He's a stranger with an urn. Okay? They finally realize. They back up and they fly into each other's arms. We have a moment of joy in a Greek tragedy. Sophocles was a genius. I have seen audience members turn to each other. Their eyes are glistening. The brother and the sister are reunited. My God. And let's do one better. Aegisthus comes on and he says, I hear that we've got news. Orestes is dead, they say. Electra is saying, yes, yes. They just brought him in. He says, oh, the body's here. Great. Bring it out. I want to see it. The door's open. Out comes a stretcher. On the stretcher is a figure covered completely. And he thinks, Orestes, ha ha. He pulls back the cover and it's Clytemnestra. Now, is that brilliant playwriting or is that brilliant playwriting? Yeah. And everybody in the audience knows it, but the two main characters, they don't know who the other is. It's a wonderful, wonderful sense of, wow. And you know, they used to give prizes for these plays. There was a festival and there were 3 playwrights every year, and they would rank them 1, 2, and 3. Sophocles wrote, they say, historians, I don't know, 120 plays. Never took second, only first.
I heard that when Sophocles was young and Aeschylus was getting on, and Aeschylus came out with his Oresteia, that he won and Sophocles came in second.
No, you're probably right, because they don't know the companion pieces. Each submission had 3 plays and a satyr play, but they don't know the other plays with the Electra, so they don't know how it did. But with the Oresteia, he won first.
George, I'd like you to talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about your decisions regarding the appearance of the theatrical figures. You have the chorus, you have the main actors. I think you've told me you chose not to use masks.
Yeah, there was a conscious decision about separating your audience from the humanity of the actors or the characters on stage. I didn't want people to think, oh, this is just some kind of scholarly endeavor. These are people with feelings, in fact, gargantuan feelings, you know. So I made decisions, Electra, because even though she's the daughter of a king who's dead, she is ostracized by her mother. Her mother has her reasons, and we don't get into it now, but the point is that she is an enemy to her mother, all right? She's hoping that Orestes will not come back, she being Clytemnestra, will not come back. Electra lives for the moment that Orestes will come back as a grown man and reclaim his throne. But Clytemnestra is powerful enough to make sure that Electra does not have a beautiful dress, does not have expensive sandals, does not walk around the palace, you know, looking stunning, as her younger sister Chrysothemis does. Electra tries to incorporate Chrysothemis into her plan of how they're going to get the mother. And Chrysothemis says, no, I'm sorry, I like the life I'm leading in the palace. I like nice clothes. You know, I don't want to get our mother angry at me the way she's angry at you. So Electra's costume was drab, all covered. And I never understood the all covering until the first production. And then it dawned on me visually what Rondiris had done. And that is that there was a cap that Electra wore, and the chorus wore a cap. But hers was a little bit more, what's the word that I want? Elaborate, an elaborate cap. She had sleeves down to her wrists, whereas the chorus members were bare-armed. And when you get 7 women in a row and their arms are bare, even though they have dark costumes on, you're getting this striking, moving choreography. These are the values that you can find only in production. You don't read them on a sheet of paper or in a book, you know. So, dawned on me the first time out, that's why the chorus doesn't have sleeves. He wanted bare arms to make these designs as they move across the stage. Things like that add to the production.
And no masks, right?
And no masks, right.
Do we think, or maybe we don't even know, but do we think that maybe the ancient theater, they wore shoes that elevated them a little, made them seem taller?
Yeah, they did.
They did.
It's an accepted fact historically that that was part of the uniqueness of the Greek theater at the time. They wore things that made them visible to 15,000 people. If you've got an audience that size, you're not worried about the minuscule things, you're worried about the big things. So the masks represented who these people were and what their characteristics were. Aegisthus' mask, the mask that he wore, is very different from the mask that Orestes wore. You know, the young man, vital, bent on revenge, the old man, crooked, angry, and triumphant in a terrible way. So I figured that the more layers you put on the actors in terms of costume, the more the separation for an audience to care about these people, to recognize who they are, etc., but to care about them as human beings, you know. We buy the fact that Orestes and Electra are brother and sister. We buy that fact. Anything that takes away from that, I'm not interested in, because theatrically it weakens the visual impact.
Could you talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned a production of the Bacchae that you did. I'm not sure where. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
There was an American Educational Theater Convention in Los Angeles, and that was made up of teachers of theater on college campuses all over the United States. And I got a chance, an invitation to go. So in the resource room, I had my flyers, and it reflected pictures of Electra and reactions, etc. And some guy from a school in Ogden, Utah called Weber State picked up one of them and called me and said, you know, what you describe in this flyer is very interesting. Would you consider coming out to Ogden and doing it? I said, I'm there. This was the first reaction that I had after I did it at Lake Erie College. So it was the next step in the development that I could do it in less than 8 months. He was part of a festival, and it had to be ready July 22nd. You know, I went out there, and he was very pleased. The impact of the show brought attention to his theater department on the campus. His parting words to me as I was packing my car, getting ready to go to the Repertory Theater in St. Louis, he said, be thinking of what Greek tragedy you'd like to do next summer. You betcha. I'm back in St. Louis, and I read in the paper where there is a poet who's giving a lecture on Greek tragedy at a girls' school next door. So I go, I'm the only male in the audience, and out comes this dapper young guy, and he starts reading from his own translation of Euripides' The Bacchae. Well, he had maybe 40 girls in that room, and they were hooked on every word. This was not a lecture on the academic side of Greek tragedy. He was going to town on a very sensual script and beautifully read. He was also young and handsome.
Was that Mr. Rush?
Yes, R-O-C-H-E, Rush. Yeah. And I was blown away with it. I said,
Sorry about that interruption.